Commander Jinho stood at the massive observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching distant stars twinkle through the transparent aluminum walls. His hands were clasped behind his back, but anyone who knew him could see the tension in his shoulders. Behind him, the greatest minds of humanity waited in silence. The council chamber doors hissed open with a sound that reminded Jinho of Earth's old subway trains. Out walked Councillor Vextar, his tall blue frame moving with the fluid grace of his aquatic species. His four eyes gleamed with what humans had learned to recognize as smugness. Following him were representatives from 12 other advanced civilizations, each more alien than the last. "Commander," Vextar's voice bubbled. Through his translator device, the council has reached its decision. Engineer He-Jin stepped forward from the human delegation. Her dark eyes were sharp with intelligence, and her fingers unconsciously tapped against her tablet computer. She had spent months studying alien technology, trying to understand how humanity could compete with species that had mastered faster-than-light travel thousands of years before humans discovered fire. "Speak your terms," Jinho replied, his voice steady despite the weight of representing his entire species. Vextar's gills fluttered in what his people considered laughter. 30 rotations of your homeworld. That is how long humanity has to prove it deserves membership among civilized species. From behind the alien counselor emerged a massive insect-like creature, its chitinous shell gleaming under the station's artificial lights. "Your species is young and violent," it clicked through its translator. "You wage war on your own kind, you destroy your planet's environment. Why should we allow such chaos into our peaceful galaxy?" Pilot Dongmin clenched his fists at his sides. He had served in Earth's Space Defense Force for 15 years, fighting off raiders and protecting merchant vessels. The accusation stung because he knew there was truth in it. Humanity was still learning to work together as one people instead of hundreds of competing nations. "What must we prove?" Jinho asked. A crystalline being that looked like living diamond stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice chimed like wind through glass. "Something impossible for your primitive minds. There is a dying star system in the Kepler sector. 3 worlds with billions of innocent lives hang in the balance. The star grows unstable and will soon explode, destroying everything within 50 light-years." Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed with pleasure. Every advanced species has attempted to save that system. The Zephyrians with their quantum mathematics failed. The Mechanicus Collective with their planet-sized computers found no solution. Even the ancient ethereals declared it hopeless before retreating to their dimensional pocket. Hyojin's tablet beeped softly as she accessed the data being transmitted to their ship. Her face grew pale as she read the stellar analysis. The numbers were terrifying. A Class A star with an unstable core, magnetic field fluctuations that defied known physics, and gravitational anomalies that made normal space travel nearly impossible in the region. "If you succeed," the crystalline being continued, "humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. You will have access to our trade networks, our technologies, our protection." "And if we fail?" Dongmin asked, though he already knew the answer. Vextar's gill slits widened in his species' version of a cruel smile. "Exile to the outer rim. No contact with civilized space. Your species will remain trapped in your little corner of the galaxy until you either evolve or destroy yourselves." The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of the station's massive engines. Jinho looked at his team. Ye-Jin was already deep in calculations, her brilliant mind working through possibilities. Dong-Min stood ready for whatever dangerous mission awaited him. Behind them, a dozen other humans, each expert in their field, waited for orders. These aliens saw humanity as primitive, violent, chaotic. Maybe they were right. Humans did still fight among themselves. They did make mistakes that more advanced species had learned to avoid millennia ago. But they also had something these perfect logical beings had forgotten. "We accept," Jinho said firmly. Vextar's expression showed surprise. He had clearly expected the humans to beg for more time or easier terms. "You cannot be serious. Species, with technology far beyond yours, have failed." "Then we'll find a different way," He-Jin said, looking up from her tablet. Her voice carried quiet confidence that made several alien representatives shift uncomfortably. 30 days, the insect creature repeated. The countdown begins now. As the alien council members filed out of the chamber, Jinho turned to his team. The weight of 7 billion human lives rested on their shoulders. Somewhere in the Kepler sector, 3 alien worlds faced destruction. Every logical analysis said the mission was impossible, but humans had never been particularly logical. Captain Subin gripped the armrests of her command chair as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler sector. Through the bridge windows of her flagship, the UES Determination, she could see something that made her stomach turn. The star at the center of the system pulsed with angry red light, its surface writhing like a living thing in pain. "Ma'am, sensors are going crazy," reported Navigation Officer Tejo from his station. His young face was pale as he stared at the readings flooding his screens. "The star's magnetic field is fluctuating every few seconds. Gravity waves are hitting us even from this distance." Subin nodded grimly. She had commanded ships through asteroid fields and pirate attacks, but she had never seen anything like this. Around the dying star, 3 planets hung in space like condemned prisoners waiting for execution. According to the briefing files, those worlds held over 2 billion alien civilians who couldn't evacuate in time. In the science lab deep within the ship's hull, Dr. Minho worked frantically over a collection of alien devices that the Galactic Council had provided. The equipment looked nothing like human technology. Instead of clean metal and glowing screens, these machines seemed to be grown rather than built. Organic curves and crystalline structures pulsed with their own inner light. "This makes no sense," Minho muttered, running his hands through his black hair. He had 3 doctorate degrees from Earth's best universities, but this alien science operated on principles he barely understood. "Their quantum stabilizers should work, but something about this star is different." His assistant, Dr. Yun Seo, looked up from another alien device that resembled a flower made of liquid metal. The Zephyrian records show they tried to contain the star's energy output using dimensional barriers. It worked for exactly 47 minutes before the barriers collapsed. On the bridge, Subin watched as her small fleet of 5 ships spread out in defensive formation. They looked tiny compared to the massive alien vessels that had attempted this mission before. The wrecks of those previous attempts drifted in the outer system like metal tombstones, their hulls twisted by forces no engineer had predicted. "Captain," Communications Officer Boram called out, "We're receiving transmissions from the observer ships." Subin looked at the tactical display, showing dozens of alien vessels positioned at a safe distance from the unstable star. Representatives from every major galactic civilization had come to watch humanity's attempt. Most of them expected to witness another failure. "Put Councillor Vexitar through," Subin ordered. The aquatic alien's face appeared on the main screen, his 4 eyes gleaming with barely concealed amusement. "Captain Subin, surely you can see the futility of this endeavor. The Mechanicus Collective deployed computational arrays the size of moons. The result was catastrophic failure." "We're not the Mechanicus Collective," Subin replied calmly. "Indeed. You are far more primitive." Vextar's gills fluttered with laughter. "Your ships are held together with metal bolts and chemical explosives. How do you expect to succeed where energy beings and quantum intelligences have failed?" Before Subin could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. On the tactical display, the star's surface erupted in a massive solar flare that stretched millions of kilometers into space. The 3 doomed planets shuddered in their orbits as gravitational waves washed over them. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Subin commanded. "Helm, take us deeper into the system." "Captain, that's suicide," Tejo protested. "The radiation levels alone will cook us alive." "Not if we do this right," Subin said, her mind racing through possibilities. "Minho, I need those alien stabilizers online now." Down in the lab, Minho and his team worked desperately as the ship shook around them. The alien devices hummed with increasing power, their organic surfaces growing warm to the touch. "I'm trying, Captain, but their technology is designed for species that think in 11 dimensions. We're working with human brains that barely understand 4. Through the laboratory's small porthole, Yunseo could see one of the threatened planets growing larger as their ship approached. The world's surface was covered in sprawling cities that glowed like circuit boards in the darkness. Billions of aliens down there were counting on a species they had never heard of to save their lives. "Wait," Minho said suddenly, staring at a particular alien device that looked like a metallic brain. "These readings, the star isn't just unstable. Something is feeding on it from the inside." On the bridge, Subin felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean, feeding on it?" "There's something alive in there, Captain. Something that's been growing inside the star's core for centuries. The aliens who built these devices, they were trying to kill it, not stabilize the star." The tactical display updated with new information. As Minho's scanners penetrated deeper into the star's interior, what they found there defied explanation. Something vast and ancient writhed within the nuclear fires, its presence warping space-time itself. "Captain," Boram said quietly, "I'm detecting movement from the observer fleet. They're backing away." Subin watched as the alien ships retreated to an even safer distance. Clearly, some of them knew more about this situation than they had revealed. The humans were not just trying to stabilize a dying star. They were walking into a trap that had been waiting for thousands of years. Engineer Daun wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the massive alien device humming in the cargo bay. The thing looked like a metallic octopus crossed with a cathedral organ, its tentacle-like appendages pulsing with energy that made her teeth ache. Around her, the ship's hull groaned under the stress of gravitational waves from the dying star. "This is insane," muttered Chief Engineer Hyunwoo, watching Dayun weld human fusion coils directly onto the alien machine. "We're attaching a firecracker to a nuclear reactor." Dayun paused her welding and looked up at him with a grin that would have worried anyone who knew her well. "Sometimes firecrackers are exactly what you need." She gestured at the readout showing the creature writhing inside the star. "Look at these energy signatures. This thing has been feeding on stellar plasma for thousands of years. It's grown fat and slow." On the bridge, Captain Subin watched her engineers work through the security cameras while monitoring the increasingly desperate situation. The star's pulses were growing stronger every hour, and each wave of energy pushed the 3 inhabited planets closer to destruction. "Captain," reported scanner operator Jin Woo, "I'm detecting massive power build-up in the star's core. Whatever's in there is getting ready for something big." Through the view screen, they could see the observer fleet maintaining their safe distance. Dozens of sleek alien vessels hung in space like silent judges, their advanced hulls gleaming with technology humanity could barely comprehend. Among them, Councillor Vextar's flagship looked like a living sea creature made of blue metal and flowing water. "Incoming transmission from the Zephyrian science vessel," announced Communications Officer Boram. The main screen flickered to show a tall, elegant alien with skin like polished silver and eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. "Human Captain, our analysis indicates the entity within the star is preparing to reproduce. When it does, the resulting explosion will sterilize half this sector of space." Subin felt her heart skip a beat. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps 6 of your hours," the Zephyrian replied sadly. "Our deepest apologies. We had hoped your species might find a solution we missed, but some problems have no answers." Down in the cargo bay, Daun overheard the transmission and laughed out loud. Her team of human engineers looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Ma'am?" asked Technician Sangmin nervously. "They think there's no solution because they're thinking like advanced civilizations," Daun explained, her hands dancing over the hybrid human-alien controls she had created. "They see a cosmic entity that feeds on stellar energy, and they try to contain it or redirect it or negotiate with it." She pointed at the fusion coils now integrated with the alien device. "But we're primitive humans. We see a parasite, and we think like exterminators." In the pilot ready room, Jae-sung suited up in a modified spacesuit that looked like it had been built by someone with more enthusiasm than sense. Human armor plating covered alien environmental systems, while Earth-made thrusters were bolted onto a Galactic Council personal transport pod. "You realize this is suicide," said his wingman, Pilot Soo-young, as she helped him check the suit's seals. Jae-sung grinned through his helmet visor. My grandfather used to say that sometimes the only way out is through. He flexed his fingers, in the suit's gloves, feeling the responsiveness of the human-built control systems. Besides, someone has to deliver Dawoon's surprise package to our friend in the star. The plan was simple in the way that only truly desperate ideas could be. Instead of trying to contain or redirect the entity's energy, they would poison it. The fusion coils would create a specific type of radiation that, according to Dawoon's calculations, would be toxic to any creature that had evolved to feed on pure stellar plasma. Human fleet. This is absurd, came Vextar's voice over the communication channels. You cannot seriously intend to fly into the corona of an unstable star. Captain Subin's voice was steady as steel. We've done stupider things for better reasons. On the alien observer ships, beings of vast intelligence and ancient wisdom watched in bewilderment as the tiny human fleet began moving toward the deadly star. Their computers ran millions of calculations, all reaching the same conclusion. The humans would be vaporized long before they could complete their mission. What these advanced species couldn't understand was the human concept of acceptable losses. Every calculation they ran focused on preserving the lives of the mission participants, but the humans were running different math entirely. Jae Sung's modified fighter shot out from the UES determination like a bullet, its human engines screaming at maximum burn. Behind him, Dawoon's hybrid device was strapped to his ship's hull, its alien components already beginning to resonate with the star's chaotic energy. Jae Sung, radiation levels are spiking, warned Subin over the comm. Your hull temperature is already past safety limits. Roger that, Captain, Jae Sung replied, his voice calm despite the fact that his instruments were lighting up like a Christmas tree. Beginning final approach to the corona. Through his cockpit window, he could see the star's surface writhing with unnatural patterns. Something vast moved beneath the nuclear fires, and for a moment, Jae Sung could swear he saw what looked like an enormous eye-opening in the stellar flames. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the lone human fighter dove toward certain death, carrying with it the hopes of billions of strangers the pilot had never met and never would. Pilot Jae Sung's fighter had made it halfway to the star's corona when his ship's hull began to buckle under the impossible heat and radiation. Alarm screamed in his cockpit as system after system failed, but he had managed to deliver the first phase of Dawoon's plan. The hybrid device attached to his ship released its payload of toxic radiation into the star's outer layers. "It's working," shouted Dr. Minho from the science lab aboard the UES Determination. "The entity is reacting to the poison. It's pulling back from the star's surface layers." Captain Subin watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The creature writhing inside the star was indeed retreating deeper into the core, away from the toxic radiation. But the victory celebration died in her throat as new readings flooded the screens. "Captain, the entity is condensing its energy," reported scanner operator Jin Woo, his voice tight with fear. "It's preparing for some kind of final release. If it explodes now, it'll take the entire system with it." On the bridge, Engineer Dawoon looked at her calculations one more time, hoping desperately that she had made an error. She hadn't. "We need to deliver the main payload directly to the star's core. The outer radiation won't be enough to kill something that size." "How?" asked Subin, though she already suspected the answer would be one she didn't want to hear. "Someone has to fly the main device straight into the core," Dawoon said quietly. "The radiation shielding will hold for maybe 90 seconds once they enter the star's interior. That should be enough time to deploy the weapon." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support and the distant groaning of the ship's hull under gravitational stress. Every person present understood what Dawoon was really saying. This was a suicide mission. "I'll do it," said Pilot So Young, stepping forward from her position at the backup navigation console. At 25, she was the youngest member of Captain Subin's crew, with bright eyes that held more courage than fear. "Absolutely not." Subin replied immediately. "I won't send a kid on a death mission." So Young's jaw set in a stubborn line that reminded Subin of her own daughter back on Earth. "With respect, Captain, I'm not a kid. I'm a pilot, and this is what pilots do." She gestured at the tactical display showing the 3 doomed planets. Besides, look at those worlds. There are families down there, children who deserve to grow. Hop! On the alien observer ships, beings of vast intelligence monitored the human communications with growing confusion. The Zephyrian science officer turned to his captain with genuine bewilderment in his ancient eyes. "They are actually considering sending one of their own to certain death," he said. "For strangers, for species they have never met." The Zephyrian captain's silver skin rippled with emotions his people had forgotten centuries ago. "Our calculations show a 0.003% chance of the pilot surviving the mission. Surely they understand this." Aboard Councillor Vextar's flagship, the aquatic being watched the human deliberations with 4 eyes that held something approaching respect. His aide, a crystalline creature of pure logic, chimed its confusion. "This behavior serves no evolutionary purpose," it said. "The human female gains nothing from this sacrifice. Her genetic line ends. Her knowledge dies with her. It is completely illogical." But Vextar was remembering stories from his people's ancient past, tales of heroes who chose death over dishonor, legends his logical modern society had dismissed as primitive mythology. Back on the UES Determination, So Young was already suiting up in the heavily modified fighter that would carry Da Yun's weapon into the star. The device looked like a metallic flower crossed with a nuclear bomb, its alien, and human components working together in ways that should have been impossible. "So Young," Captain Subin said quietly, as the young pilot ran through her pre-flight checks, "you don't have to do this. We can find another way." So Young paused and looked up at her captain with a smile that was equal parts terrified and determined. "My grandmother lived through the Tokyo bombings in World War II. She used to tell me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you're scared out of your mind." She climbed into the cockpit of her fighter, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what she was about to attempt. Through the ship's communication system, she could hear the voices of her crewmates wishing her luck, telling her they believed in her. "All stations, this is So Young," she said into her helmet microphone. "Beginning final approach to the star's core. If anyone wants to say goodbye to their families, now would be a good time." Her fighter launched from the UES Determination like a shooting star in reverse, diving toward the roiling surface of the dying sun. Behind her, the human fleet and the watching alien observers held their breath as one small ship carried the hopes of billions into the heart of nuclear fire. Through her cockpit window, So Young could see the star's surface rushing toward her at incredible speed. The entity inside seemed to sense her approach, and the stellar flames twisted into patterns that looked almost like reaching hands. "This is for everyone who gets to see tomorrow," she whispered, and pushed her engines to maximum burn. The last thing the observers saw was a brief flash of light as So Young's ship disappeared into the star, carrying with it the weapon that would either save 3 worlds or die trying. The star's surface erupted in a blinding flash as So Young's fighter penetrated the nuclear fires. For 30 seconds, the dying sun blazed brighter than ever before, its light washing over the 3 threatened worlds like a final farewell. Then, impossibly, the chaotic pulsing stopped. Captain Subin gripped her command chair as the bridge. Crew stared at their instruments in disbelief. "Report," she ordered, her voice barely steady. "The entity's energy signature is collapsing," scanner operator Jin Wu announced, wonder creeping into his voice. "So Young did it. The weapon is working." Deep within the star's core, Da-Un's hybrid device had done exactly what it was designed to do. The toxic radiation spread through the creature's body like poison through a bloodstream, disrupting the energy patterns that had sustained it for millennia. The ancient parasite that had fed on stellar cores across the galaxy was finally dying. On the observer ships, beings who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations watched in stunned silence as the star began to stabilize. Its angry red glow faded to a healthy yellow, and the gravitational waves that had threatened to tear apart 3 worlds gradually weakened. "Impossible," whispered the Mechanicus Collective's primary intelligence, its mechanical voice filled with something approaching awe. "Our calculations indicated a failure probability of 99.97%. Aboard the Zephyrian science vessel, the ancient Captain stood before his bridge's massive view screen, watching the 3 planets as their cities began to shine with celebration lights. His silver skin rippled with emotions his people had almost forgotten how to feel. "Send a priority message to the High Archive," he told his communications officer. "Today we witnessed something that must be recorded for all future generations. A species chose to die for strangers. But the most profound change was happening aboard Counselor Vextar's flagship. The proud aquatic being floated in his command chamber, his 4 eyes fixed on the readings that confirmed what his logical mind could barely accept. The humans had succeeded where every advanced civilization had failed. "Counselor," his aide said nervously, "perhaps we should reconsider our assessment of the human species." Vextar's gills fluttered slowly as he processed what he had witnessed. His people had achieved interstellar travel when humanity was still discovering fire. They had mastered technologies that could reshape matter at the quantum level. Yet, when faced with an impossible choice, they had chosen to think like exterminators instead of engineers, to sacrifice instead of calculate, to act with their hearts instead of their computers. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session aboard their massive space station. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the great chamber, their varied forms creating a tapestry of galactic civilization. At the center of it all stood Commander Jin Ho and the surviving members of his team. Engineer Da Yun looked exhausted, but proud as she answered questions about her hybrid technology. Dr. Min Ho explained how human intuition had succeeded where alien logic had failed. Captain Subin spoke quietly about So Young's sacrifice, her voice never wavering even as tears ran down her cheeks. "The human approach was completely illogical," declared the crystalline representative from the Silicon hegemony. "They wasted resources, ignored computational probabilities, and made decisions based on emotional responses." "And yet," interrupted the ethereal collective's shimmering spokesperson, "they succeeded where we failed. Perhaps logic alone is insufficient." Counselor Vexitar rose from his floating platform, his imposing form commanding attention from every being in the chamber. "I have spent considerable time analyzing the human methodology," he began, his voice carrying across the vast space. "Their success was not accidental." He activated a holographic display showing the mission's key moments. "Observe their decision-making process. Where we saw an engineering problem, they saw a living threat. Where we calculated acceptable losses, they calculated acceptable sacrifices. Where we relied on individual superiority, they succeeded through cooperation." The chamber fell silent as Vextar's words sank in. These were concepts that many species had abandoned in their pursuit of perfection and efficiency. The idea of knowingly choosing death for the benefit of others had become as foreign to them as breathing water was to humans. "I must make a formal statement," Vextar continued, his gills flushing with what his people recognized as deep emotion. "The Galactic Council was wrong about humanity. We saw their conflicts and called them primitive. We saw their emotions and called them weakness. We saw their willingness to sacrifice and called them irrational." He turned to face Commander Jin Ho directly. "But those very qualities saved 3 worlds and billions of lives. Commander Jin Ho, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for our arrogance. Humanity has proven they possess something we have lost in our pursuit of advancement." Jin Ho stepped forward, his shoulders straight with the pride of his species. Around him, the surviving members of his team stood at attention, each carrying the weight of So Young's sacrifice and the hope of 7 billion humans back on Earth. "Counselor Vextar, we accept your apology," Jin Ho replied. "But we didn't do this to prove ourselves worthy. We did it because it was right." Vextar's 4 eyes gleamed with newfound respect. "And that, Commander, is precisely why humanity deserves full membership in our council. You have earned your place among the stars, not through superior technology, but through superior character." The great chamber erupted in a sound unlike anything heard before, hundreds of alien species expressing approval in their own unique ways. Clicks, chimes, roars, and harmonics filled the air as the galaxy officially welcomed its newest members. Commander Jin Ho smiled as he thought of So Young. knowing that her sacrifice had not just saved 3 worlds, but had opened the stars to all of humanity. The end.